That was quick.
Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games, and you're listening to Legends of Tabletop.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming in and checking us out. Episode 126 here as we continue to climb. Thank you, Brendan, for coming on tonight. You reached out through the YouTube messages of all places, which is kind of cool. I don't think anybody's ever reached out to us that way before.
Yeah, well, I'm not very up to date on things, so I usually, go through whatever channel I can find.
That's cool. That's cool. Before we get started, so we're going to be talking about the Wandering Heroes of Ogre's Gate and your new supplement, Ogre Gate Inn. But before we get to all that good stuff, which I'm super excited about, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get into gaming?
I guess I got into gaming in '86 when I was just a kid in the '80s, and some of my friends introduced me to it, and the way they were describing it, it sounded like the best video game in the world. And then when I showed up at the guy's house, there was pencils and paper, and it looked almost like homework, and I was kind of disappointed. And then we started playing, and it just clicked with me, and I've been playing ever since.
So I'm assuming you got your start with D&D then?
No, actually, I think it was a variation on BattleTech, and I've been trying to figure out for the longest time what game it was. I don't know if it was a game called Mech Warrior, or there are a few candidates that people have proposed to me, because I didn't really know what the guy made pre-gens, and then we just sort of ran our characters. I know I played a robot, and it was actually a pretty crappy character. I was fairly disappointed with my stats compared to the other people's, but the game was unbelievable, and just the idea that you could just do whatever you wanted to do, and it was like I don't even remember the plot, but I remember we were on all these different planets doing all this crazy stuff, and there was a little bit of a cyberpunk vibe going on in the campaign that he was running, but it just it was a real amazing experience, and it just sucked me in so fast, and but I still don't know what system it was.
Oh, that sucks. I got in, I guess around college, and one of the first things I had played, unbeknownst to me, and we didn't really do it as a role-playing game, but I did play BattleTech with a guy who was going to community college with. We would set up 9, 12 maps on the floor. We had sheets taped all up on the walls. We had everything separated out into squads. But yeah, like you said, it's pencils, papers, dice, lots of adding, tons of math.
Yeah, the math. I mean, I looked at it and I was like, this just looks like painful. And but once we started, all that stuff went away. The paper, the pencils, it was all just there to facilitate whatever was going on in the setting. And so, it sort of evaporated. I didn't care, but yeah, I know. I mean, I know there was there's a BattleTech RPG. There's I think the game was called Mech Warrior, some variation of that. And for all I know, he could have just been cobbling it together from various pieces. And then he did start us on D&D. So I know I don't know what edition it was. I believe it was some form of basic D&D, because I remember him using the basic D&D modules. And then the Satanic Panic happened. I had to take a year break, and then I was able to resume, and then we were on to AD&D and 2E and a variety of other games. I grew up in an area in Boston where we really played a lot of different games. So D&D was always the mainstay, but there were usually a number of other games like Torg and GURPS, obviously, and just various unusual games that we would maybe play for a one shot here or there.
Right. Did you see that Torg's got a reboot? Shane Hensley's got a new Torg universe coming out, or maybe it is out. Yeah.
I heard about that. It's one of the downsides of running a company is I don't get to play as much of the stuff that's coming out that I'd like to, but that's one that I would like to revisit, because I had a friend who ran Torg, and we used to play in the Orosh setting, and I really enjoyed that. So and it's been so long that I actually bought the box set again about a year ago, but I haven't really been able to play it. So I'd like to revisit it and see if it holds up, or if I'm just remembering it a particular way. So, but whenever it's rebooted and there's new stuff, that makes it more exciting. So,
right.
But just in terms of recruitment, it's easier than if you have this old used box set and you're trying to get new players.
Yeah, but that's the good stuff, though.
No, it is. I mean, I'm happy to play that stuff, but I just find the recruitment aspect of it can be a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But with the right crew, I'm especially now that people are more open-minded about going back to the older things, it is a little bit easier. And there's sort of like I think people are getting drawn to the charm of the older stuff again, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, well, it's a nostalgia. I mean, we're all getting old now, so it's like, I remember back. Well, you remember that campaign and this thing. It's like, we should play second ed again, and start up a campaign or do a one shot or whatever.
Well, it's also sometimes you kind of build up all this stuff in between, and it's nice to go back and say, let me just eliminate all the stuff that was happening in between there and get right back to sort of the root of it. So that was, I think that it's nostalgia, but I think it's also reboot would be the word, just kind of getting back to the basics every once in a while.
Right. Do you have a favorite system?
Well, right. I mean, I pretty much run my own games now, so I'm sort of locked in with that. But if I like Savage Worlds, I like D&D. Again, unfortunately, one of the downsides of having your own company, if you're putting out stuff, is you really have to run your own thing. So just in terms of what I'm familiar with now, it's my own system. But I'd say if I'm a player, I really like to play in Savage Worlds. I'm comfortable running 3rd edition D&D. I'm comfortable running Doctor Who, but most of the time I'm running Ogre Gate.
Sure. That makes sense. How did you get into game design?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just one of those things that every gamer is kind of a little bit of a designer. And around 2005, 2006, me and Bill, my business partner, started talking very seriously about making games. And I was making games with other people. I'd made a number of games up until then, but I started getting very serious about it. And in 2009, we started Bedrock Games, and we released Terror Network, and then we followed up with Crime Network, which is like a mafia game, and horror show, and Servants of Gaius, and we published Arrows of Indra, and then Sartorius, and now Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate. So it just kind of, I don't know, we just kind of decided to do it, and now is like you can do it easily. Do you know what I mean? There's no the bar is so low that it's very easy to enter into publishing now. So,
self-publishing, and then especially with games like RPG Now and all those kinds of places, game crafters for board games and things, or if you need components for tabletop games, it's I don't know. You say it's low, and it makes it sound like, well,
I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean it. I mean it in a good way, because I think gamers. In gaming, it's the kind of hobby where a lot of people can be game designers. Do you know what I mean? It's not, some of the best stuff I see is fan content on the internet, on blogs and things like that. So having the bar low is good for just like, having more things out there to choose from can be good. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention too that I when I first started, one of the first things that I did was I wrote an adventure for Rogue Games for Colonial Gothic. And so that would really be sort of before Bedrock, that's sort of the thing that really kind of got me into, I can do this,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, obviously if the bar is low, that does mean you can have, a lot of stuff that sucks too. There is that, but I don't know. I like the utility of having all this stuff out there.
And it's cool because you get some more offbeat things, maybe stuff that maybe say like a Monster Hearts that wouldn't necessarily 20 or 30 years ago have gotten the nod at a publisher. And you're like, well, screw it, I could just do it now. I go to Kickstarter. With social media being what it is, you do have a lot more options, and sometimes you've got to weed out some things that maybe not as fantastic, but it's a pretty cool time, I guess, to be a designer, because like you said, there is more viability for people to jump in and do it.
Yeah, no, I definitely, and also, I mean, it creates more competition. So, I mean, on the one hand, maybe, like I think people do sometimes see that lower bar as a bad thing. I think I like having that because I feel like there's actually more quality coming in also. Do you know what I mean? I mean, yeah, there's
Mm.
more coming in general. And so maybe there are more things that kind of aren't as good, but there's also more good things coming in and you have to compete with that. So, just to use Ogre Gate, there's a ton of people making games like that. And I have to consider that when I'm making something, and I can't just count on the fact that, oh, I'm the only guy, or I'm only one of two people. I know that not only are there other people out there, but there are people who are observing, and they'll just jump in if we're not giving them stuff that is at a certain level. So I think it kind of elevates the game too across the board. I don't think just because it's easier to enter that everything just kind of sort of spreads out thinly and gets bad.
Right. And it's cool now with podcasts, so we can do things like this where you can have people come on and be like, hey, I've got this really cool project, somebody please listen.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to have people come on and help promote that and help support the community. And you still support the big guys too, like Chaosium's awesome, and
Yeah.
Watsy is what Watsy is. It's not like they really need the help, but it's cool to be able to bring people on and put a spotlight on a project, or on a company, and say, hey, this is cool too, you should check this out. It's
Yeah, I mean, to me, it kind of reminds me a little bit of some of my experience in the '90s, where there were just all these different games that I remember playing at that time, and I felt like, there was a local comic store where we used to play games there after hours, and I was always being introduced to new systems that were a little bit different or quirky, and then I think, early in the 2000s, everything was sort of D20. But now I feel like there's that. I feel like I have so many options now, and there's still that D20. There's still, like the OSR has all the sort of various old versions of D&D, and you have 5e, and you have all these options. But you also, in addition to that, have a crazy number of like you said, smaller games that are trying different things.
yeah. um I just lost my place.
No, that's okay. No worries.
So you guys, you were talking about all the different games that you have put out so far. Have you had your hand as designer in each game, or do you take different roles depending on what the project is?
So the only one that I didn't have a hand in designing was Arrows of Indra, which was an RPG pundit game. But other than that, I've been involved, and also in some of the modules, there were a couple of modules where I hired a writer. So when we made the Terra Network line, there were a few modules there where I just hired people to write them. But for the most part, I've been the lead writer, the lead designer, and my business partner Bill passed away a couple of years ago, and so ever since then it's been me, but also Dan Orcutt and some other people from the group of sort of, it's me, but there's also people behind the scenes that are contributing in various ways. And and so Dan Orcutt and Ryan Turner are two people that you'll sometimes see on the rule books with their names there, but there are other people as well.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about the Wandering Heroes of Ogre Gate and the new supplement, Ogre Gate Inn. Tell us a little bit about the setting. What's the setting all about?
I mean, it's basically a Wuxia setting. It's martial arts with sword play and heroes that have chi-based powers, and can use things like lightness kung fu and pressure point techniques. And it's pretty much inspired by the old Shaw Brothers movies, the various Wuxia TV series that are based on Gulong books and Louis Cha novels. And it's intended as sort of a just kind of an homage to the genre. And the system is based on a system that we use in all of our games, and it's particularly based on our more recent fantasy RPG, Sotorius. And there's a connection between the two systems and settings as well.
Okay. And before we go any further, do you want to explain what Wuxia is?
Oh yeah, it's basically about martial heroes. It's like the most famous example would probably be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's that sort of martial heroes in a setting where you have this martial world and sex, fighting each other, and with a strong emphasis on things like swordplay. That's how I would describe it. There are more academic definitions of it, but my definition is if it feels like an old Shaw Brothers movie, and then that's I'm sort of in the right zone.
Okay. And it's like you say with Crouching Tiger, it's, kind of running up a tree or running along a wire, like, it's sort of above and beyond the normal, like, okay, we're just going to have some martial arts combat. It's elevated to like a whole other level.
Well, yeah, there's certain things that you would expect to see. So you'd expect to see sort of like internal energy, like the characters who are cultivating chi and can use that in their martial arts. Characters who can shift their body weight and achieve a certain level of lightness. They're able to leap over buildings and things like that. So there's these, there are these baked in aspects of the cosmology that sort of explain those things. And again. And these are all sort of movies that are largely based on the works of guys like Louis Cha and Gulong, and so there's kind of like a shared universe almost feel to them.
Okay, cool. And as you mentioned, the setting sort of falls within the same cosmology as Sartorius. Did it originally start as like, oh, I'm just going to create this world within the fantasy setting, and then it kind of morphed into its own project, or was it intended to be its own project?
So yeah, it started out, we had Sartorius, which is kind of like characters who are semi-divine. They have a spark of a deity in them, and that opens up all kinds of things. And I realized I could do Wuxia there, and I kind of wanted to scratch that itch, because I had been running a lot of Wuxia campaigns, and it was something I wanted to do, but it's very niche, and it wasn't at the forefront of what everybody else wanted to do at the time. So I just started carving out a little area of Sartorius to experiment with that. And then I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to make like a little 20-page, supplement for Sartorius where it's, where the emphasis is more on Wuxia. And the more I started working on it, the more I just was expanding it. And then it went from being this thing that was just a 20-page document that constantly referenced Sartorius to taking out all those Sartorius references and turning it into a full game, and then connecting them through the cosmology. And so that there was a seed that was planted in Sartorius that I knew was going to become Ogre Gate. And yeah, so it started out as just a little supplement that I didn't even know if I was going to charge anything for. It's going to be free. And that's why it's pay what you want now, because I realized, I told everybody it was going to be free. But I'm basically making a 500-page rule book. So I guess what I'll do is I'll do pay what you want, and hopefully it'll work out.
Right. The overall setting is loosely structured on the Song Dynasty.
Yeah, it's definitely more inspired by the Song Dynasty. And the reason for that is my benchmark was, can I do Condor heroes in this setting? And so that's sort of the tail end of the Song Dynasty, and I wanted to make sure that I could at least do that. And then I figured if I have that as a base, then I have space for the setting to sort of progress into other eras from there. And so yeah, so it's definitely more Song Dynasty, and I think that's good, because there's a lot of history, and it's a lot easier if you choose a period and kind of focus on that period. And again, it's not a historical setting; it's a fantasy setting, but it's inspired by it. And so I do try to draw on as much of the history as I can. And if it was at a further point down, that would just be more history to really have to bring into it.
Sure. And how much time did you put in that research? Like, how in depth did you wind up getting into Chinese history as you were working on it?
I got pretty deep, I think. I mean, I actually went to college for history. That was my major, but China was, I only took one course in China while I was there. And, so after college, I read up on Chinese history. I had an interest in it, but I found I really had to go back and give myself a crash course on some things that I wasn't like, there were things I knew from the movies, right? Like, I'd been watching these movies, and I knew sort of what the tropes were, and I knew, and I had been involved in martial arts and stuff, so it wasn't like I was totally, coming in with no knowledge beforehand. But the I had to essentially create a syllabus for myself and follow the syllabus, and I think we ended up with I think a pretty good setting from the research that we did. I think the research was pretty instrumental in getting things to where they ultimately were.
Sure, and the setting itself. I mean, I didn't read them cover to cover, but I went through both books fairly well, and it's like super rich and in depth, and some of the just almost like throwaway, like this NPC has this like crazy backstory of where it came from in like 2 paragraphs. I'm like, wow, it's just so cool. And I imagine that it comes not only from the movies, but doing that ridiculous amount of research to pull, like you said, those tropes and all that stuff together.
I think most of that's from the movies, and from the books, but there's like there's a thing in the genre where characters will just have, like, suddenly they'll reveal this weird backstory that they have that illuminates why they're doing what they're doing, and so I tried to incorporate that wherever I could, and so I really want, and again, it's an homage to the genre. So there's if people go and they watch Brave Archer, they'll see a lot of like what I'm trying to get through there. If they go and if they watch a bunch of old Choi Yuen movies or something, but I think this setting does a really good job of showcasing the genre, which was sort of the intent.
Cool, very cool. Specifically with the new supplement, there's elements of Shensha as well. Can you explain what that is?
I can try. It's basically a more fantasy-driven Chinese genre and a lot of it comes out of sort of web novels these days. If you go to a place called Wuxia World, you'll find a novel called I Shall Seal the Heavens, among many others. And these are stories that involve characters that they're not just martial heroes. These people go on to become really powerful. And so, it's a whole other level above the power level that you normally encounter in Wuxia. Wuxia has very grounded supernatural elements to it, but it doesn't tend to get into the territory that you see in Shansha. And so another example, there was a television series called The Journey of Flower, which I drew a lot of inspiration from in the Ogre Gate Inn book, and that also sort of gets into that territory. But just a little bit, not quite, not like pure fantasy, but you'll tend to have these various sort of immortal Taoist sects and things like that, and there may be gods involved and things of that nature. So it's a little more in like Journey to the West type territory.
Okay. So you could potentially see stuff like the Monkey King or fox spirits, or that would be more, I don't want to say integral to the setting, but more common or not as unexpected in that particular setting.
Yeah, well, we also drew from a lot of like Chinese horror stories. So there's an anthology called Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio, and there was a lot of stuff that I drew from there in the Ogre Gate Inn book. Because the Ogre Gate Inn book, it really started as an homage to the Dragon Gate movies. And the first Dragon Gate movie is directed by King Hu, and so he also directed a film called The Touch of Zen, and that's inspired by a Pu Song-ling story from a Strange Tales in a Chinese Studio. And I guess I was just sort of thinking King Hu, Pu Song-ling. I was sort of combining those things in that region, and so yeah, so it's a really kind of a mix. There's horror, there's wuxia, there's shansha. It's the Li Fan book, which is the Ogre Gate book that we're talking about. That goes in a somewhat different direction than the core book. I think it kind of went where I started taking things in the campaign after I was really running it for a while.
Okay, and you had a long running campaign in the Li Fan area, right?
Yeah, I had a I still have a long running campaign going on there. I think I'm trapped there forever for a while. I have a so I had the Bonebreaker campaign, which it makes its way into the book through Bone Breaking Sect, but that was a group that I play with every Sunday online, and I just kind of let them loose on the setting, and just to see what would happen, and so I ran that campaign for I think a little over a year, and then we got a new player, so we're like, hey, let's start over, let's start fresh with this guy, and so that became Disposable Disciples, and that's the campaign that I currently have my session logs. Again, it's once a week, so there's usually a session log posted every. I don't know. I'm a little behind this week. I had my session on Sunday, but I got lazy and I didn't do a session log. But usually once a week there's a session log, and yeah. So I've had those two campaigns. I also have a Saturday campaign, which is I would say more of a traditional type campaign with it's my campaigns tend to be sandboxy, but this one there's more big adventures going on in the Saturday game. And then I also have a game on Tuesday that I play, and so I got a number of ongoing campaigns. But Leaf Fawn, I've had a steady campaign that's kind of been really based there for a while now.
Cool. Yeah, I saw the Bone Breakers in there, and I'm like, man, there's just so much information here, and plot hooks and stories and maps, and same thing with the palace. The Yaogong Palace, like the isometric maps and like all these different like side quests and things, and you can try to find the plans for the Flying Guillotine, but they're not there. And it's like, wow, there's just like so much stuff in here. Like you could just run a campaign in one of those settings.
Yeah, no, well, that's the point. I wanted to do it in a way that was a little bit more friendly to. So one of the things that I sometimes encounter when I would try to run Wuxia campaigns or when I would talk to people that played them was this sense that they were maybe a little bit unattainable, because you're trying to emulate a Wuxia movie, so you want it to feel like a Wuxia movie, and sometimes I think that the image that people had of what it should be it was contrasted with what a typical D&D campaign would be, and the elements that were considered D&D elements are sort of ignored, so. And I'm saying this very very poorly, but what I'm trying to say is that if you go and you watch a lot of these old Wuxia movies, there's dungeons in them, and there's a lot of features that you would encounter in a regular Western style fantasy campaign, and so I focused in on those when I was reviewing the movies and things like that. I really paid attention to make sure that I incorporated that into the setting, and so I just feel it's more gameable as a result. It gives you you can do the thing with the sex and the martial heroes. That's definitely part of it, but there's also room to go dungeon delving if you want to. There's room for monster hunts and all sorts of different approaches. And so that's just with all the stuff going on in the setting, that's I maybe went a little bit overboard with the details, but I don't know. I think that kind of it works. Like I ended up I really enjoy doing it. So
Right.
so that's just kind of how I've been making the material, I guess.
Well, it certainly comes through as someone who's not super familiar. There is just like a ton of stuff for you to be able to pull from, and I will throw this out. I was going to clarify. You're saying sects, so it's SECT.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because it comes out real fast, and I'm like, I know what you're saying, but
I'm saying so clans. We'll say the word clans.
Yeah, there you
go. so yeah. Well, I have a series called Sects of the Martial World, and that did kind of become a joke because I realized after a while people thought that's what I was saying, but no, it's martial clans of the setting. That's what the line is, and yeah. So there's that aspect too. There is the the sort of the rivalry between the sects and the masters and all that. But yeah. So yeah. But we can use the word clans if that's So
I just thought it was funny because it's come up like 2 or 3 times, and I'm like, I should probably say something. Like, what is he talking about? Sex? So, this pull this from a different area of my brain here as you're kind of talking about stuff. Do you run any games in Meat Space? Do you have any games at home or at a game store, or do you do everything online?
These days, I actually I do most of it online. My Saturday game is, on paper, it's a real game where we all meet up at my house. But what's ended up happening is I just find it more convenient to play online now. So I've slowly shifted them onto the online, approach. And it really, I mean, to me, it's the same. It's the same as if they're here to me because I'm so used to playing online now. But like I said, technically my Saturday game is I'm if I'm intending for us to play online, I have to mention it to them. Otherwise, they would come to the house. So
Sure.
So that's technically a real game. But I have some limitations. I have Crohn's disease, and I've been sick for the past 7 years. So I don't go to conventions anymore. I don't go to game stores anymore. I used to do that stuff, but I don't know. I in this age with the internet, you don't really need to play face to face. I know people like that, but for my style of play, I don't really need it because it's mainly sort of a theater of the mind approach anyways.
Sure. Yeah, so that was the crux of my question as to whether or not you felt that there was a difference. Like, I do exclusively at this point, really all of my RPG playing online for the podcast. I haven't sat at a table with people in like 2 or 3 years. and I in that sort of sense, in a theater of mind or like a heavy RP style of game, it kind of doesn't matter, especially when you do have video. But I'll find myself like in playing a character, like waving my hands, getting real close to the monitor, and like still try to emulate as if we were at the table. So I find it interesting that you feel it's more or less the same.
Well, you know what it was? At first, I didn't feel that way. When I first started, I remember getting very annoyed. I was like, this does not, like, I was having trouble connecting. Like, and part of it was Skype wasn't as good back then.
Yeah.
And I think we might have been alternating between Skype and Google Hangouts, whichever one we thought was best at the time. But after a while, whatever it was about that was annoying me, whether it was the glitches or just, people not sounding exactly the same, that faded. And it just became like, as if they were here. And so now the good thing about it is I get a game with people all over the world. I don't have to game with people that are just living next door to me. It's not so I have a group, my Tuesday group, they're from England. I'm the only American in that group. And it's an interesting experience because I feel like I get exposed to slightly different ways of playing, because there are regional differences in how people sometimes play games, but I also get to meet different people. And in our Sunday game, we had a guy who was living in China and is a translator for Shan Shao. And, that was really eye-opening, getting that, having somebody who was able to sort of critique the content of the setting as we were playing it. And it made things better. So I like that online games sort of open up who I can play with.
Right. It's definitely cool. We've got people from the UK, people in Wisconsin, people on the East Coast, people. Todd Foley runs games for us. As If Productions, he's over in Nevada. So yeah, we're kind of all over the place, which is cool because, like you say, you do get to meet a lot of different people and kind of pick up. I can't say I've noticed a regional difference, but because the one guy that's in the UK is actually from Pittsburgh, so.
Oh, okay. It just seems like there's some subtle difference. Not as bad as it was when I first started gaming, where you could like walk across town and find another group that played in a completely different way than you did. And but I think like if I talk to people who are like on the West Coast, it seems there's a little bit of a different vibe going on there than over here on the East Coast. And my players in England, they seem to have slightly different preferences than my players, and how much of it is just those people versus the region. No, but I feel like I get exposed to more preferences by just having a wider range of people from around the world to play with.
Sure. And it's a different, yeah, I mean, different environment. It makes sense that people would have, sort of different expectations or different, just a different mindset coming in because their background is different. I mean, their social structure is different to a certain extent.
Yeah. So I think, it definitely, I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's good for a GM to sort of have to deal with that. I think that, one of the skills that I like to sort of develop as a GM is adapting to different player groups, and so it gives me an opportunity to try out different things.
Mm-hmm. It's all about the improv.
Yeah.
You mentioned you were a martial artist yourself. How easy or difficult was it to translate what you knew about martial arts into an RPG setting?
Well, I should say first, my training was mainly in things like Taekwondo and Muay Thai and boxing and a little bit of Sanchu, which got me some of that Kung Fu stuff because we did have to learn some of the basic forms and things. But it's really not in the Chinese martial arts. And the Chinese martial arts are very different from Korean martial arts and Thai martial arts. But one of the hardest things for me trying to make a martial arts game was I really had to, when I first started trying to do this, I was bringing way too much of my real world martial arts knowledge into it. And I realized that, number one, if you read like a Wuxia novel, it's pretty clear that they're really kind of letting their imagination fly a lot of the time. And they're not as tethered to what might actually really happen. And
right.
So I felt like a person who's coming to a game and looking for a Wuxia experience is more interested in what is going on the screen than in, how I, someone who is thinking maybe more in real practical terms, how I think it should play out. And so I just kind of abandoned that and just strictly decided, okay, I'm just going to go back, rewatch all this stuff and really sort of pay attention and take notes and incorporate that into the game. And I allowed myself a few little corners where I could put in the things that I wanted from my real martial arts experience. But the only place that it ended up really coming into the game, and I've said this a million times to people, but is the spinning back kick technique in the game. And the reason why is because that was my favorite kick when I was competing. So I liked that kick, and I wanted to have it actually work the way it was supposed to work in competition.
Right.
But aside from that, it's all just sort of, Hong Kong style, Shaw Brothers style martial arts.
Did that open it up for you then when you sort of made that mental like, hey, I just got to kind of let that go? Was that more liberating than to sit down and kind of suss all those different techniques out?
I think it was, and I think also it just kind of it's sort of like you when you're a martial arts person, you can kind of let that part of your ego get in the way too much. And letting go of that part of my ego is really liberating. So I just, not feeling kind of more like I was looking at the stuff fresh again was what was liberating about it.
Cool, very cool. I actually did Tai Chi for about 6 years.
Okay, so you have way more experience than I do with Chinese martial arts then. So I think it would be interesting to see, what your point of view on this stuff would be. But yeah, I've never done Tai Chi myself. I did Taekwondo, and Muay Thai was the one that really connected. And that's not really like a tradition. I mean, it's traditional in some sense, but it's really more sport oriented, I think.
Yeah.
But how did you find Tai Chi?
I enjoyed it. I initially started, so the Sifu taught 2 separate classes. There was a martial class where we learn all martial techniques, and then he taught what was called a healthways class. So it was more just kind of like what you'd see old people in the morning, kind of like going through forms and like doing all this stuff. And I'm like, that's for me, because like I don't want to say I'm an angry guy, but I have issues that should probably be resolved.
Okay.
So I'm like, that'll be good. It's good moving meditation. You get in, and like very first class, he's like, oh, you guys think it's this, meditation. It's a martial art. I'm like, God damn it! Like, why am I in this class?
But you did it for 6 years, so I mean, you must have really taken to it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I did the health thing for the first couple of years, and then transitioned into also the martial class. So I did both, and then it was on a demo team. So, we got like once a month, every couple of months if he could turn up something, for us to go out and perform for the school. So it was cool. I enjoyed it. It began to get more difficult, obviously, in the martial class, and just as life things were happening, it didn't work for me to stay and continue.
Okay.
And the thing that sucked was that I was like the youngest person in the class. It was easy for me to pick up the movements, but the downside was that I didn't then practice a lot when I wasn't in class. So I got a lot of work in class, but not a lot of work out of class, which kind of defeats the purpose.
I get you. Yeah. No demo, but I did demo team for Taekwondo, and I did demo and I did competition, and demo is fun. Demo is like and that's the stuff that ends up on the screen. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the stuff that's like where like the Wuxia stuff I think would be relevant. So you probably have a good appreciation for it, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, actually I thought of doing Tai Chi at one point because, like my health's not the best, but I still sort of miss the martial arts. And so I thought of going to, Tai Chi at some point. I may still do it, but I think I'm getting to that point in my life where I'm just getting lazy and I don't commit to all the different things that I used to commit to.
Yeah. It could be good. I mean, it's definitely, if you're into all the things, we did, talk about Chinese medicine, like we didn't just do martial arts. We did, other stuff. At one point we were learning, like basic Chinese, which was like, I'm out of school now. Like I don't want to like learn Chinese now, but, so they're, you get a good teacher. And we also did some Qigong work too. So, stuff like that, especially for health, could be something that, could definitely help you. I mean, certainly not going to hurt.
No, I made a promise that I was going to get into Qigong, and I abandoned it pretty quickly. I got a book on Qigong and health, and like I said, I'm just getting older and more lazy. So, but I'm also torn. Like I have to, I do have to do, like when I work on a project, I create research goals for myself, and so I find that a lot of my personal goals fall by the wayside. I did get back into weights, not too long ago, but that fell by the wayside. So I think I'm just getting older and more lazy.
I see. You need a partner. You got to get somebody to go with you. My daughter shamed me going back to the gym, so the two of us started going to the gym again, because I'll go for a while and then I don't go, and then I'll not go for 2 years, and then I'll go for 3 or 4 years and be like, I don't want to be bothered. But we're getting older, so it's like you have to do those things.
So I'm so lazy. I got a whole weight set that I use, and I still somehow manage to stop doing it. You know what I mean? It's like literally 2 feet away from my bed. And I even got like an outdoor heavy bag stand, and all I have to do is buy the heavy bag. And I just haven't had the time to go to the sporting goods store and get a good heavy bag. But I think, again, I'm just lazy now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and it's all the other stuff too. Like, if you're, like you said, you're working on a project, you're probably ensconced and just working on a project and not doing much other stuff. So, I mean, it tends to eat up a lot of time. Yeah.
I find so, because between the writing and the reading, and then also I do other things. I have the podcast that I do on Friday now with the movies. And so I got to, make sure I watch, if I'm doing a podcast on Friday, I always try to watch the movie 3 times during the week. And so that's 6 hours of time. And if I'm doing and I have the in between podcasts, and so right now I've been committed to watching Babylon 5. So
I saw that post today.
So I'm watching like 6 episodes of Babylon 5 a week. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not complaining. This is all fun stuff to do.
Right.
But yeah, if I have to choose between Babylon 5 and weights these days, I'll go with Babylon 5. It's
I feel you. I feel you. Sorry, so we should probably go back this way again.
Oh yeah, I apologize.
So you said earlier that you use the same system for all the games that you're doing. It's the network system, so it's a D10 pool system. You're trying to hit a target number. If you have a skill, a rank in a skill. So if you have one rank in a skill, then you would roll 1d10. If you have no ranks, you'd roll 0. You'd roll 2d10, take the lower number.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of Day Trippers. Todd Foley does. It's a D6 based system, and it's more stat based than skill based. But your stats will give you bonuses. So like you have your classic like brains and psyche and whatever. So if you have 2 dice, you roll 2d6 and then take the higher. If you have skills that have pluses, then you throw those in as extra dice. So it was easy for me to like pick it up, like, oh, I get this like right away. Like I know what you're doing here, which was pretty cool.
I think it's a pretty simple system, and it's pretty. Some people don't like dice pools, which I've discovered to my horror. But some people like them or pretty fond of the system that we have. So I should say it was Bill Butler who really kind of was in charge of he developed that system. Like I told him what I think we should have, but he was really the one who kind of honed the original system. And I think and the thing that he always emphasized to people was it's roll this number of D10 and take the single highest result. He was very particular. That single highest result was very important to him. And I used to get lazy in my description, and he would always correct me. So but yeah, so it all kind of comes from when we first started. I think Bill did the bulk of the heavy lifting on the core system.
Okay. And then you've got primary, secondary skill groups, and then you can distribute points within those groups. You get more points in your primaries, fewer points in your secondaries. And it has you were talking about Savage Worlds earlier, and you have a flaw system, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, because you have the murder hobo, like, all right, we're gonna be the best, and we're gonna do all the things, but the more I role play, the more I really enjoy having that Achilles heel on a character. It's just so much fun to either play that on a regular basis, like if a character is an alcoholic or whatever flaw may be, or to have it come up at dramatic moments when you're playing, like you're trying to do a thing and like, oh no, here's your long lost, especially for like a Wuxia setting, here's your long lost sister who was also the assassin that killed your mother. Like it's like, oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, well, that was the cool thing about the flaws in this. Number one, I tried to make as many of them as legitimate flaws as I could. But also there was a lot of opportunity to introduce Wuxia tropes through the flaw system. And so that was, like the white hair flaw, the
one arm.
The one arm, though that had to be in the game. One of my favorite movies is The One-Armed Swordsman. And like I said, I wanted to be Condor Heroes was my baseline, and The One-Armed Swordsman comes from a scene in Condor Heroes. So getting that in there was important. And Faded Flaw turned out to be way more. That was something that I just sort of started out on a whim, and then I realized there was more to it, and I developed that into a whole subsystem. And so yeah, the flaws are one of my favorite. And normally I don't really, I can't say that I've normally been as invested in the flaws when we've made games. So a lot of times, we make the flaws, but this time it really felt like it was connecting with the genre in a way that when we were working on them.
Nope, you're freezing up a little bit.
Oh, am I freezing? Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Yep, you're good.
All right, hold on. The internet is doing its thing.
Yeah, that's Google for you. Yeah, speaking about flaw, when I first started looking at the book, it reminded me so much of, Sunday morning kung fu. I used to go to my grandmother's after Sunday school because we would have dinner there, and it would be Three Stooges and then kung fu all afternoon. And it was just, as I'm reading through this, I'm like, oh my God, this is so. it had such resonance for me, just as a nerd, I guess. And then I'm like, oh man, like there's got to be drunken master, and I go through hedonism, wine. I'm like, oh my god, this is the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, like the classic Shaw brothers really had an impact on this, and so there's there's a lot of these, the sort of the 70s style kung fu, and Cheng Che is a really big influence in the book, and so yes, I mean we tried. I feel like there's only so much you can do. Like I'm sure we miss things, and in fact that every once in a while I'll be like, oh man, why didn't I include this in the book, or why not that? But I think we got a lot of it. I feel like we got a good amount of it in there.
Yeah, no, definitely. So we're talking about the techniques themselves. The kung fu techniques are considered skills. In combat, you would have 2 actions, which I guess is fairly standard. So you could, make a skill and a move, or 2 moves, or, kind of break those up. So, it's interesting then that your kung fu technique is a skill. So it's your default combat action is a skill, as opposed to like, oh, I do athletics or I make a climb check. No, it's your combat thing.
Yeah, no, that's and the kung fu techniques really originated with the Sartorius spell system. So that was like so that's where the sort of cathartic and the non-cathartic thing came up, and we realized, oh, that would work great for a martial arts thing. And so I mean, there's basically there's like the 2 classic approaches to martial arts. Do you make like individual, like basically make spells for martial heroes, or do you make it more open? And they're both totally viable approaches, but I decided to go with I'm just going to make a technique for like everything in the game. And I thought that was just more fun for you have all the techniques have names, and like you said, they're all tied to the skills. And so, and so what that also allowed for was, like you said, the skills are grouped into different categories. And obviously a lot of the combat skills are connected directly to kung fu techniques, but some of the kung fu techniques are tied to somewhat unexpected skills as well. So you get opportunities to use those. And yeah, so it's, I think the kung fu system works pretty well. And I've actually been experimenting with variations of it for a new game. And so but then after I was doing that, I went back to Ogre Gate, and I'm really finding Ogre Gate is my comfort zone for martial arts techniques.
Okay, cool. And you said there's a technique for everything. That may be true. There's 180 techniques in the core book, I think, and then even more in the supplement Ogre Gate Inn.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I have a technique for every skill, but a lot of them. In Sartorius, we actually made a point of getting every skill. So when we did Sartorius, we wanted to make sure that you could actually use basket weaving to as a spell effect. And so our equivalent of basket weaving in Sartorius is one of the more attaches to one of the more useful spells. And in this, we kind of took that route, but we weren't as militant about connecting every single thread.
Sure.
But yeah, and so in every book we release new techniques. So Ogre Gate Inn has techniques in there, and they're all kind of tied to the different sects that are present in the book.
And I thought that was interesting too, going back, to the movies and the novels and things that, and even in, traditional martial arts, like Yang style Tai Chi is Yang style Tai Chi, and Chen style is Chen style, and that doesn't necessarily cross populate. So it's cool for me to see that you do have this distinction among the sects, and that they are learning separate techniques, and you have to have I guess you don't have to, but traditionally then you would have a Sifu in the setting that is where you're going to learn these techniques. You're going to either be at the school, or you're going to occasionally meet on some holiday or whatever, and go over all this vast knowledge. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, that's what we try. I mean, and do with the clan books are sort of modeled on that too. And the idea is, like I said, I went for I included the dungeons and stuff like that. But a big driver of any Wuxia campaign is going to be rival sects and clans, and so being able to pull out a sect that has the various techniques, so that they can say my Iron Claw technique is better than your Mad Monkey Kung Fu. It's sort of the clash of the different styles is one of the charming things about the genre, and we tried to bring it in. I mean, I think in the Ogre Gate Inn book, we have some interesting selections. We kind of there are some unusual sects in there, so we got some new stuff that covers new ground.
Okay, and the Ogre Gate Inn proper sort of facilitates more of a living setting, I guess. Like the NPCs sort of have their own objectives. There's sort of things happening in the world, regardless, I guess, quote unquote, of the players being there, which is a good, I guess, touchstone for GMs, especially maybe new GMs to the system, to be like, hey, this is what's happening in this area. Go.
Yeah, no, that whole thing, like the Dragon Gate Inn movies, like every single one of them pretty much starts with the heroes arrive at an inn and there's something going on there, and they kind of have to poke around to figure, there's like something dangerous or mysterious going on. And so I wanted to emulate that, but I also was sort of consciously trying to capture some of the feeling of the old Feast of Goblins module, because that's one that's always had an impact on me as a GM. And that was all about sort of the living adventure. So it was sort of that idea of you get there and there's a situation and the players can kind of explore it. And if they start doing things over here, they might find out about like a secret tunnel that leads, somewhere else. And if they go over here, they might find out about a tribe from the Kushan Basin that are looking for an artifact, or people could just start fighting. Like it's set up so that, different things can happen. A fight can break out between two unrelated groups, or, Wuxia is all about like these really larger than life characters that will sometimes behave outrageously. And so I tried to get as much of that in there as I could. And I think it's one of those things. I think it illustrates the point. I think, especially if you've seen, Wuxia movies and then you look at the material, I think it works as a good sort of starting point for a campaign.
Cool. And even though they may act outrageously in Lifan, which is the setting around where the Ogre's Gate Inn is at, is outside of the Empire proper, and some of those social strictures are a little bit more rigid. Including like you can't wear that color. There's a lot of that, like, again, like rich, setting material that you wouldn't necessarily think of. You're like, oh, we're going to do a martial arts campaign. Cool, we get swords and we can jump around and whatever. But because it's based at least loosely on an actual historical setting, you do have a lot of these interlocking parts, which is really cool.
Yeah, and Lifan is one, because in a lot of the other regions of the setting, that stuff is kind of fading a little bit, or some of the old school rules are not as strict. The aristocracy is sort of dwindled, but in Lifan there are still these like aristocratic clans, and they still have a lot of cultural influence, and so it's kind of like the big dividing line that people notice when they would go there is in Lifan they don't use chairs, they use sort of more like low mats and things like that. And so in other parts of the setting they're okay with chairs, but in Lifan they still consider the chair sort of a barbaric invention. So yeah, I like it. Lifan is, I just sort of think of it as sort of the old school region of the setting.
Yeah, very cool. It's going through the PDFs. You've got table of contents for days. Like everything is just, it's more like an index than a table of contents. I'm like, where the hell is this? Where's the material at?
Yeah, well, we don't have an index, so our tables of contents have to function as like a mini index, sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it's a pretty big table of contents. I would agree.
Cool. And you also have an ongoing web novel, the Legends of Ogre Gate.
Yeah, and actually, that's not me. That's Deathblade, who's the guy that was the translator that I mentioned.
Okay.
And he translates books like I Shall Seal the Heavens and A Will Eternal and a number. He's also translated a bunch of Gulong books, and they're up on that site, and they're really good translations, in my opinion. I'm a really big fan of a movie called Heroes Shed No Tears, and he has a translation up there that's really good. And so he's writing the Legends of Ogre Gate story, which is about the background of the setting is about this heroic couple, Sunan and Bao, and their fight against the Demon Emperor. And so he's just sort of dramatizing it and taking the knowledge that he has of the genres from translating and making a web novel. It's really entertaining. And what I've been doing is I've been recently, every time he releases a chapter, I've been putting out like, items or, new mechanics related to whatever's going on in the book.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I bookmarked it. I'm so far behind on my reading right now.
Yeah, Deathblade's awesome. I've gamed with him. I've had a lot of long conversations with him, and he knows a lot about Chinese culture, Chinese languages, and the wuxia genre, and now he's translating these Shansha web novels, and I don't know how he does it. These are really long. The whole web novel thing is some of these they release multiple chapters a week, and they get up into the hundreds of chapters total. They're enormous. But it's interesting because it's like a whole growing, emerging genre now. So
interesting. Cool. I would have never known had I not seen it coming off the website.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I mean, I would definitely would recommend if anybody is curious about that stuff, check out Wuxia World. They got a ton of stuff there. I know that I Shall Seal the Heavens is like a really big one that everybody seems to like, but there's a huge selection to check out.
Cool. I don't think I included a link. I'll have to go back and throw a link in for that.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Do you run a ton of games? Do you prefer GMing, or do you like?
No. I hate GMing. I like to be a player. I run because I have to, and I do like it. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it, because you wouldn't run them for games I run if you were miserable. But I prefer the setup I liked was when Bill was running the games and I was making stuff to and then playing in the campaigns that he was running. That was my preference. I consider myself a mediocre GM. I don't consider myself a stellar GM, or I'm just okay. And one of the things that I think is good about that is I have to when I write stuff, I try to do stuff that I feel like any GM could sort of take and use. And so, but the better GM in the group was Bill. Bill was the number one GM. I'm okay, and I'm getting better now that I've been doing it. And it's not like I never GM'd before. I GM'd all through the 90s, and I GM'd in the 2000s. I had my own games that I was running, but around 2008 or so, I started to prefer to be a player, because I just didn't want the DM. You have the responsibilities that you have when you're a GM. So,
yep.
But yeah, it's not gonna. The games aren't gonna run themselves. So
Right.
I'm gonna run them.
Yeah, I've run some, and I'm the same way. I'm like, I like to make crafts and stuff for the table. I'm like, oh, look at this shiny thing. Don't worry about the story. Look at this thing. It's really cool, right?
Yeah, I when I put the effort in, I can be good. But like I have such a tendency towards laziness as a GM that a lot of what I do is just I'm creating tools to curb the lazy habits that I have.
There you go. Well, two of our GMs, Todd and Neil, just kind of have an idea and then just sort of roll with the story, which is amazing. Our other GM, Jesse, he's, I think, more of a planner in that regard. Like we're playing a Cypher system game now, and it's part of like a 10-year campaign that has been running in the same setting, and it's all been sort of different ages and different stages. And this is just another offshoot of that. And then, like, man, how do you, like, he's got feast days and he's got calendars and like all this crazy stuff. There's no fucking way. I'm like, let me bring up the, you know, the monster manual and like, I need this level encounter. Okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah, see, I'm funny. I can sort of operate on both of those ends of the spectrum. Sometimes I'll do the over preparing thing where I just have everything covered and I got like my big notebook and I got all of the feast days and all that stuff. And sometimes I'll just sort of roll out of bed and I kind of prefer the games where I just roll out of bed. And the problem with those though is the longer those games go on, the more prep and planning they seem to the more record keeping they require.
Yeah.
And so that's the part that always annoys me. But I, you know, I've learned to do it just so that I'm not asking my players, hey, is this character dead or alive? Like I can't. You know, that's in an Wuxia campaign, that is something you've got to be on top of because
right.
they're dying all the time. And so,
well, especially with those big, so if you do like a big world, you know, overarching campaign and, you know, there are cogs in this huge, like that, yeah, that's a ton of bookkeeping.
Yeah.
What's happening?
I tend not to. Recently, for some reason I decided to introduce time travel. I think I must have been watching a Chinese Odyssey again, and I'm gonna throw time travel at them and see what happens. And then I did this whole thing with a module that's got time travel, and I ran my play, and I made this really elaborate system for how things change when they introduce things to the past, and my players. I decided to unload it on one of my regular campaigns, and it totally blew a hole in the continuity. and so I'm still sort of picking up the pieces of.
That'll teach you.
But yeah, but it's I think sometimes that's good because sometimes it's like a big reset button, and then it can all sort of restore, I guess. But yeah, but what I ended up doing was because I blew a hole in the continuity, I had to have I basically had to make 2 documents to myself and figure out what was changed and what wasn't. And it became like I felt like an accountant, except I was just dealing with, lines of continuity in the setting.
Right. Cool. So when did Ogre's Gate Inn come out? It just came out this year, right?
Yeah, I think I really should know the date. I think we released it in September. I think that, and it was in PDF, and it won't be out in print until probably I would say December or January. I'm getting the proof soon, and so if that proof looks good and there's not any weird surprises in it, then I'll green light the print, and it should be available in print. But I'm really awful with that. Like I kind of release things at my own pace, and then I have this habit of I release the PDF first, and then I take forever to put out the print, and I'm just not. I just constitutionally, that's the only way that I'm capable of doing this. So,
is the print also available on RPG now, or is that coming from print on demand, or?
It's so we go through Studio 2 for our distribution and stuff, and so it'll be available through a link on our webpage. You can directly order it from Studio 2 if you want, or you can find it in various platforms and sometimes in stores and things. I don't know exactly where it ends up, but I know it gets into distribution. People tell me they see them in places. So if you can't find it at a store, though, just either ask the guy at the store or just go online and go to our website, and I can connect you to it.
Cool. Very sweet. Do you have any new projects coming up for tail end of this? Well, I guess this year's almost over. Do you have anything coming up for next year?
I have. So I have the House of Paper Shadows, which is it's like a horror. I originally wanted to have it out by Halloween, but that obviously isn't going to happen. And so that'll probably be out. I'm going to say January or February is probably the safe bet now. If we're lucky, we'll get it out in December if we can really crank things up. But that's like a horror adventure set at the House of Paper Shadows, which is this really important organization in the setting, and it's a really cool adventure. I think it's one of our better ones. We also have a book called The Tournament of Daolu, which is a tournament module, and that's kind of a cross promotional thing that I'm doing with Deathblade at Wuxia World for Legends of Ogre Gate. And so that's going to be a pay what you want because it's like promotional, and it's going to be like 100-page PDF. It's got all kinds of stuff in it. It's got the time travel adventure that I was talking about, and and it's a really crazy time travel adventure, and it might not even happen because it's this one little thing that could come up if something happens at the tournament. So it may never even come up in the People's Campaign, but that'll be like 100 pages, and it's essentially a setting book for Dalu. And what I was trying to do is I was trying to connect the modern era of Ogre Gate with the stuff that's going on in Legends of Ogre Gate. So that's why there's a time travel thing in it.
Gotcha.
And so you can get some of the sort of the classic Ogre Gate setting stuff in there. And then I'm working on a new project called Tales of Song Ling. And it's basically, I just wanted to do like a Strange Tales from a Chinese studio type game. And I was originally going to do it as like a pure Ogre Gate thing. And I decided to step back and make something that was based on Ogre Gate, but tailor it to what I was trying to do. And so this is still familiar. Like it has a lot of the core rules that you would find in Ogre Gate, but it's much more simplified, and character creation is faster, and it's more geared for horror. So the characters die more easily. And it's basically, if you like a Chinese ghost story or Painted Skin or The Bride from Hell and stuff like that, it's that kind of a thing. And that I don't know when that's going to come out. I like that right now. The maps have just been finished, and now we're going to start in on the art. And so once we get through all that, hopefully sometime by mid next year, that one will be out too.
Okay, is that just an adventure, or is that going to be a whole?
It's a whole game. It's a whole game. Okay. It's going to be a shorter book because I'm tired of doing the 400, 500 page thing. I'm tired of the 195 page. It's just too much now. So I'm doing 100-page books now, and this is going to be 100 pages. It'll be a fairly simple rules system, and there'll be 4 lengthy adventures in it to kind of get the ball rolling. And then we'll have a bunch of Adventure Siege and the monster section and all that. But it's basically just a standalone game. And the way that I've been using it, and you don't have to use it this way. I present a number of possibilities, but I use it as sort of a dream world for my characters in Ogre Gate. And so that's not the way it has to be used. That's just how I use it. But basically, I have so on my Tuesday game, they have their Ogre Gate characters, and then they have their dream version characters of themselves that are in these Strange Tales, and we kind of have been alternating between those two realities. And it's been fun because sometimes I want to just have like a monster adventure, and I don't want to do what I mean? So I can do that with the Strange Tales. And it also lets me experiment with different adventure structures, because in Ogre Gate, I do tend to lean very heavily on the sandbox and sort of mystery type stuff. And Strange Tales gives me a little bit more for like Monster of the Week type adventures. Cool.
It kind of like Fear itself a little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's but I would say it's again, I go back to Ravenloft because that was the one that I ran as a GM, but it's very sort of derived from the way that I used to approach Ravenloft is sort of how I've been approaching the Tales of Song Ling.
Cool. Well, yeah, I'm excited to check that out. I'd like to get my hands on that.
Yeah, I'll see. I mean, it's pretty much done. And like I said, the art is coming out soon. So I'm hoping to get that one out fast, because it was one of those ones where I started it and I just started running a bunch of play tests, and there was sort of a prelude to this where I had taken let me see if I can find the book here. So I took the Penguin edition of Strange Tales, and I literally did an entry on the blog every day related to Ogre Gate of that. And that got me thinking on it. And so I already had like a lot of ideas by the time I sat down to do it. So I think we'll get it out pretty quickly. I think it'll be faster than the normal track.
Cool. I have to con Neil into running the scenarios in there.
Yeah, I'll send them over, and you can try them out.
No, I gotta wait till they come out, and I'll pick them up. That's how this is supposed to work, right? I mean, you gotta support your creators.
No, but I like to get feedback from people, so I'll send things to people early on if they're interested in giving me feedback. I'll send stuff to people. I have some folks looking at this one now and giving me their feedback. But that's I mean, I'm a small operation, so most of it's my own feedback, but I still get feedback from outside groups.
Yeah. No, I'm ecstatic that you came on. Going through the through the PDFs that you sent over just was such like a wave of nostalgia on one hand for me, with the Sunday Kung Fu stuff, and then just as having the opportunity to play so many games, like, man, we've never done like a martial arts thing. Like, this is the best. Like, I want somebody has to run this.
It's a lot of fun. I've been running Wuxia games for a while now, and I think it's a great sort of I don't know, it's a great blueprint for a campaign, and system is almost not that important. Back in the day, I ran it with a number of different systems, and I had not this setting, but I ran various sort of Wuxia fantasy settings, and it's a lot of fun. You can't go wrong with like rival schools of martial artists and guys who will kill you because they don't want you getting your hands on their manual, and just there's just a lot there, and also I think the genre it's a little bit sometimes one of the problems I sometimes have when I do fantasy is I have this sort of like very serious idea of what fantasy needs to be. And that's probably my own issue more than anything else. But with Wuxia, it's a little more lighthearted sometimes. It sort of really balances between really light territory and really dark territory, and like on like a dime. And so I just feel like I have a little bit more flexibility with the genre.
Right, and you're not tied to like so the knock on fourth ed, you have the power cards and it's very mechanical and very grid heavy and all that kind of stuff. With something like this, like the possibilities are essentially limitless. Just from a character perspective, like, oh, I hit him with the wine thing. Like, I don't have any melee weapons. I just use all the stuff that's in town. I kick the bench out and I flip the table over, and like it's so freeform. It's just it's super exciting. I definitely want to play.
No, and one of the things I encourage is for players to invent their own techniques. That really adds to it. So once players get in the habit of that, provided they're not, you got to be careful because you don't want them like just I just give myself this win button so that I never die. But you got to keep an eye on it. But provided they're being reasonable, it's if they have a cool concept and it's if they like they saw some Wuxia movie and they get an idea, which is what tends to happen. You can bring it into the campaign. So one of my players, he saw the 5 deadly venoms and that got him all excited. He started trying to make techniques based on that, and then I told the player about the movie Finger of Doom, and he was really excited by the concept, and he started making techniques for, based on Finger of Doom without even seeing the movie. He just heard about it. He got all excited about it. So, I think it's fun because the players can really get involved in that creative side of it. And fits the genre because you are, a lot of the characters do develop their own techniques over time. So yeah, I think it's a good, it's a good fit. I find it really, it works well for long-term campaigns in my experience.
Yeah. Oh, if we only had room for another campaign.
That's always the challenge. I've been trying to play Numenera forever, and I haven't been able to because I can't fit it in. Luckily I have people in my group who run different things, and I occasionally get to play something that I really want to play. But there are a few games out there that I've been itching to play, and I just can't. I haven't had time, or unless I run it myself, I'm not going to be able to play.
All right, you guys, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, I always say that. I always say, okay, guys, this Halloween I'm going to run this, and this is going to happen, and then it never materialized. So.
Stupid adult responsibilities.
Yeah, it's just, well, I always threaten to run like a okay, I'm gonna run you guys classic Ravenloft, or we're gonna do Call of Cthulhu this Friday, and I still just end up running my own games, and I'm sort of I'm at the mercy of whatever other people want to run if I wish to play something else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not necessarily a bad problem to have.
No, no. I mean, I'm getting plenty of gaming, so I guess that's good.
Right. Well, I like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I had a lot of fun. The game seems awesome. I was messing around making characters and stuff, and just going through everything. And there's a ton of material. Uh, you know, pay what you want. I think is crazy.
I think it's crazy too. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have done it if it hadn't originally been announced as free, and then I felt like, okay, I'm obligated to kind of keep it in that zone. But I have to say, like, I mean, I don't know. I have no way of knowing how much it would have done if I hadn't made it pay what you want versus pay what you want. But I feel like overall, I think we got more interest in the game as a product of it being pay what you want, because it's easier for GMs to get the document to their players. And so and people have been, and people are, more generous than you think sometimes with those pay what you want. So it's not like, it worked out. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for every game. But it wasn't, I don't think it was a bad move for Ogre Gate.
Okay, that's fair. And do you have a Patreon or people who maybe wanted to go ahead and try it, and then I guess you can't go back and be like, oh, I want to pay for it now because it's already in your library. Can people, donate to a Patreon there? Or?
No, I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. I probably should, but I just haven't been able to get something like that off the ground yet. So what I would say is, if you get it and you're like, oh, I should have paid money for it, just tell somebody about it, and then that's sometimes that's better than a payment, because that kind of gets the word out more. But I don't, the other option is they could, we have more than one pay what you want game. So I guess, you could do it that way, but I think if you didn't pay anything on the front end and you liked it and you feel like you want to give back to the game, just wait for whatever we have coming down the pike. And if that interests you, get that, that's, it's pay what you want. You're not obligated to pay. It's not like it's not a crime if you got it free and then you liked it and you didn't, so I think it's fine. I think it all works out in the end.
That's true. And maybe even more importantly, go ahead and leave a review, wherever you pick it up, whether it's, RPG Now or Amazon or any of those places. Leave a review. Reviews are huge, especially for smaller companies, kind of help get that word out there, and it, gets in the algorithms and kind of boost stuff up. So always reviews. Super.
Yeah, they make a big difference. Reviews do make a huge difference.
So I should probably go do that now. I always tell other people to do it, and then I don't do it. So,
but yeah, no, I mean, the reviews are good. The reviews also give us good feedback. That's the other thing. Like, it's helpful to know what people are thinking, and if people really like something, and if they really don't, you kind of get a better sense of what you should be doing. So,
sure.
It's always handy.
That way, you're not designing in a vacuum. You're like, oh, I've got this really cool thing, and people are like, oh, I hated that thing. Yeah.
Well, I also have very frank players, so I get a lot of feedback before I even get the stuff out there, which is good. But yeah, it's still, I don't know, the reviews, like you said, for a smaller company, that really does gets the word out, and it also, if people see something and there's a review up, it gives them an idea of whether it's worth checking out or not. So.
Absolutely. You have anything you want to close with? Anything we missed? Anything special? Any exclusive stuff?
I don't think so. I think I covered everything. I mean, I guess I could plug the podcast one more time. We do the podcast, and I basically talk about, like I said, we're doing Babylon 5 during the week, but the specialty is on Fridays. We talk about martial arts movies, and so this Friday we're doing Lady is the Boss, which is sort of related to the My Young Auntie movie, and we did that last week. So if people are interested, they can check us out on Podbean. It's the Bedrock podcast.
Okay, I will have to throw up a link for that when they make a note for that. I think I missed the podcast.
Yeah, a lot of people missed the podcast, so don't feel bad. a very small podcast, but we have fun.
That's all right. Well, help get the word out. Cool. Well, again, thank you for coming on. This was a lot of fun for me, and I hope we have you again on in the future. Next time you have something cool coming out, we get you on and get people excited talking about it.
Okay, yeah, anytime. I'm always happy to come on.
Cool, very cool. I will throw out our deets here, as I have not done in a long time. You can find this cool content and all of our other awesome stuff at legendsoftabletop.com. We're on Twitter at legendstabletop. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. Technically, there's a Twitch channel. I'm not really using it. Obviously, we're on YouTube. If you're watching this video here, you know that already. The Legendary Brew is available now through Bird's Coffee Company. So if you hit the website, click on the link there, because the link itself is large and convoluted and I don't remember what it is, but check out the website. The link is on there. Coffee's awesome, roasted by GM Neil. So you're going to get something good there. The coffee is awesome. It's all that I drink. It's not all that I drink. It's the only coffee I drink, at home anyway. But thanks for checking us out. We hope you enjoyed it. There's links for the Ogre Gate Inn and the Wandering Heroes of Ogre's Gate. So check that out. Make sure you pay something, because it's awesome. Run some games, watch some Wuxia movies, and we'll catch you next time.